Okay. I'm trying to think like what URL we should be kind of focusing on this next session here. It looks like there might be a nasa.gov URL that we could look at, which would be awesome because it's NASA. Let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and prepare my mobile device because this happens to be a mobile issue. So we use probably slightly different tools in a mobile reduction, but should still be good. I want to make sure I still have my remote connection here. So okay, I've got that, and I'm curious. I might even put the mobile device onto my remote desktop. I don't know. It's not really necessary, I suppose. What I may wind up doing though is for mobile sites, obviously in reductions, we don't have the same liberty to make changes to the DOM that we have whenever it's on a desktop site. So first step is always to check and see if the desktop site is able to reproduce the issue. If you are, then obviously you can use the desktop to debug the mobile problems. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself real quick. I want to make sure that I have everything ready before we even start this third session because each video starts with a bit of preparation. Let's see. So the last session, for anyone who is visiting and kind of present for that, is now online. It's working. It's great. It's only in the low resolution though. But it is up. So if you're curious about the reduction for nerdstore.com.br, that is now online. Looks like we've had 7 reports as well inside the bugs.microsoftedge.com for people saying that they've also seen the issue. So I really appreciate that. That is definitely very much appreciated. Let's see here. So I think we can go ahead and get started. I'm going to let the individual here on Twitter, Massimo, know that we're going to look at this URL right now. And I want to be able to share a link to the live broadcast right now as well. Okay. So I can close off a bunch of this stuff and I think we can get going. So I'm going to get my new notepad opened up for time codes. Evil Pro says URL worked. Which URL? Are you referring to the /live URL that we mentioned just above? So right up there somewhere. Okay, so this is going to be, I believe, the last debug session, Microsoft Weekend Warrior debugging session. All right, so I'm just saving I'm actually sharing up the URL. Today is my last Saturday at Microsoft, and right now I'm kicking off my last Microsoft Weekend debugging session. So that URL has been shared with the entire world. And we can now, whoa, what's happening? Live dashboard on YouTube just freaked out on me. Okay. Okay, we can get this thing started. We'll do the NASA URL. So here we are, 7 minutes into this broadcast. We'll get it started at the 7 minutes and 30 seconds. It probably didn't sound like Illumia. Hey everybody, Jonathan Sampson here again with yet another Microsoft Weekend Warrior debugging session live over YouTube, which is like the only way anyone should ever debug anything in the sight of their peers, because let's face it, without the help of those around me, there's like literally nothing would get done. So I appreciate everyone who's tuning in. This happens to be, as I mentioned on Twitter, it's 3 a.m. or 3:15 a.m. in India. So thank you, Rashab, who's tuning in the wee hours of the morning. This happens to be my last Saturday at Microsoft. So for those of you who know me or have been watching these debugging sessions, you know that I've actually been coming in every Saturday, just about every Saturday, for the last 2.5 years almost. And this has been a way for me to, try and keep up, get the whole internet fixed. And just recently, in the last few weeks, I've decided to start streaming the debugging sessions. Somebody on Twitter said you should totally just stream these like live over YouTube. So I downloaded XSplit, which you can tell like based on the watermark down there on the side. I just never purchased or anything, but I downloaded this application. It works out really well. I got the chat window up here, some of the information down here. Obviously, using my personal Twitter handle today because last week at Microsoft, I'm going to be using Jonathan Sampson more frequently on Twitter than I will be Sampson MSFT. The bugs that we've been coming across, that we've been reducing, that we've been understanding, we've been filing them on bugs.microsoftedge.com. So if you're not familiar with that, you might want to bookmark that site, bugs.microsoftedge.com, because that's going to be a place for you to submit feedback in the future whenever you actually take the skills that you learn during these debugging sessions and reduce your own websites. We've talked about reductions in the past video, where reductions are basically taking a broken website and stripping away as much of it as you possibly can without losing the issue. So in the last video that we did, we talked about nerdstore.com.br. And when you perform a search on there, the results come with a bit of additional padding up above all of the content. Really unsightly, but only repros inside IE and Edge. It doesn't repro inside Firefox or Brave or any other browser. As a result, we wanted to figure out what the problem was. So we started in our DevTools using F12, pressing the F12 key on your keyboard, and stripping away parts of the DOM that aren't really necessary. At times, we ripped out a piece that would then cause the broken issue or the broken layout to resolve itself. That is not what we wanted. So we would Control-Z, bring back in the portion of the DOM that we deleted, and maybe move our focus elsewhere inside the DOM and try to overall start to rip out pieces and simplify pieces to the point where you are dealing with very few bytes, but you still can see the problem. And that's what we did in the last video. So if you're looking for that, you can go to the videos on my channel here and look for the one that has nerdstore.com.br in the link or in the title, and that will be the one that you're looking for. So we're going to kick off this last debugging session, the very last one ever from Microsoft's Redmond campus, unless for whatever reason I wind up here in the future. I have no idea. Who knows? But anyway, we're going to kick off this last one with, I guess, just a bit of Q&A. So if you have some questions based upon previous videos, or you're a web developer, or you're looking to get into web development, we can take some time. Michael West, thank you for tuning in, and just kind of go through a couple things. So, and then we're going to look at also a nasa.gov issue as well. And so hopefully we'll be able to reduce that one as well. That one is going to be a mobile issue. So we're going to be using some applications on the desktop here. Again, this is my Surface Book. We're going to be using an application on here to project the screen of the mobile device onto my desktop, and we'll kind of look at how to reduce that issue here in just a bit. To get us started though, I made a couple references to the DOM and deleting portions of the DOM, reducing portions of the DOM, and simplifying portions of the DOM. And looks like Lee Bridgewater justifiably asks, what is the DOM? The DOM is one of those short three-letter abbreviations. It's a short abbreviation that stands for the Document Object Model. And so whenever you come across a web page, what you're actually looking at is a document on the inside your browser. The document itself is composed of a bunch of different elements. Some of those elements represent images, some of them represent paragraphs, some of them represent links, but basically there are these core items, things that you can put together and composite into a website. You can have a div, which is just a simple logical division in content. You can have some text inside your div, some text outside of your div. And if that text, if there's not really qualitatively a difference between the two, maybe one is a label, one is a paragraph. If you don't have a distinction like that, you can wrap one in a div if you need to target, especially for CSS or something like that. So div would be one of those types of elements that you can use to create your page. Headers, so if you have some big text, important text that maybe starts off a section of your page, you can use H1 through H6 to indicate the importance of the header. Lower being more important, larger being less important. So H1 would be very big, H6 would be a little bit smaller. You can even use section elements or article elements, and all of these kind of represent portions of the DOM. So they all come together to create basically a tree where you have a single portion of the DOM at the very end that becomes your root element, and then from your root element branches out your head element and your body element, and then inside your head element maybe branches out some meta elements and then a title element. And then inside your title element, you have a text node that represents the title of the page, and that's what you see when you go to a website and you look inside the tab at the very top. The body could have hundreds, thousands of elements inside there, or it may have just a simple text node inside there. So that's what we mean whenever we say the DOM. And so we talk about reducing or simplifying the DOM. In the last example, we looked at a portion of the DOM that had a div element, which again is just this logical division of content. It's kind of a meaningless element. Immediately inside that div element, there was another div element, or two div elements are basically just one div element. Like as far as layout goes, they don't really do a whole lot. And so we have two div elements. Well, that's the same as having like one div element, unless there's some special styles in there someplace, which there wasn't. And then inside that second div element, we had a third div element. And then inside there, we had like a field set element. And a field set we talked about in the last video is an element that usually goes around labels and input controls and select controls for forms and stuff like that. It kind of gives you, there's a bit of a nice visual styling that comes with it. They used to be really popular in the 90s. Today, it's more of a logical separation or a way to group different form elements together. But because we had three levels of div elements with no special styles on any of them, we could simplify that by just making it one level of div elements. So it's like having an equation like 2 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. It's like, well, that's way overly complicated. Once you have 2 times 1, which is going to be 2, well then, okay, 2 times 1 is going to be 2, and 2 times 1 is going to be 2. You could remove all, like 75% of that equation and just make it 2 times 1, because that is what actually determines the end result, the end number. The rest of it is just a bunch of nonsense that you still have to compute, you still have to process it, but you know that it's not necessary. And it's the same way whenever you put a div inside a div inside a div inside a div. Yes, there's a lot more there, but the end result, the layout in the UI is not going to change as a result of 1,000 nested divs. In fact, the more you unnecessarily nest things, the more you get into some really kind of sketchy places. We saw, I think, one example last weekend, where if you have something like 1,500 levels deep of nesting, you run into some type of cache or some limitation inside the browser, and you could wind up crashing your tab. So you want to try and make sure that things are kept concise, semantic, meaning you're not just arbitrarily using elements for their visual appeal, but you're using them for their semantic or their meaning. And so you wouldn't, for instance, use a nav element, which usually encompasses navigational constructs or a sidebar maybe, or a toolbar at the very top of your page. You wouldn't use a nav element to put a picture in, unless the picture obviously was some type of navigation component. You wouldn't use a fig caption element, which usually goes underneath a figure or an image and hosts a caption or some text that describes that image. You wouldn't use a fig caption for your header. And so you want to make sure that you also use very semantic markup, things that are used in accordance with what they were designed for. So examples of this, you see this in many different languages. JavaScript, so if you're not familiar with JavaScript, for the longest time didn't have default values. And so people would use things like the logical OR operator, so like a vertical bar. And if the expression on the left-hand side evaluated to falsy, then it would evaluate the expression on the right-hand side, which oftentimes would evaluate to truthy, and that would be a way to assign a default value when we just simply didn't have the syntax for doing so. The problem is that you might have some values that are falsy, but you might actually want to use those, like the number 0 or something. And so I don't know why I got onto that. Oh my goodness, okay. Anyway, yeah, total derailing there. Oh, it's an abusage. Yes, it's using something in a way that it was not designed to be used. And so with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you always want to use things to the best of your ability in alignment with their intended use and what they were designed to do. And so that's something that you want to make sure, whenever you're looking at these reductions on websites, that if there's a div being used, it has a purpose. It's not just a div inside a div inside a div inside a div because the person writing the site has divitis. So let's see here. We're going to go ahead and jump in. I want to look at now, I'm going to scroll down inside Twitter to find the nasa.gov. Unless there are any other questions real quick, we can, of course, spend a couple more minutes on web development chit-chat if you want to. Otherwise, I'm going to start to prepare my phone here and see if I can't load up the nasa.gov site that was reported here by Massimo. So let me know, and we'll move on from here. Got to type in this URL. Let's see. This is actually what I want to do with this site. I think we talked about it earlier as well. Is first open the URL inside Edge to see if desktop repros the issue. If desktop repros the issue, then obviously we don't have to try and do the reduction on the phone, which is a little more difficult. DevTools can't reach it as easily as they can the desktop browser. There are still ways to work on that. Obviously, if you use Fiddler or something like that, we've talked about this in the past, Fiddler sits between the browser and the server as a web proxy debugger. It's not exactly like that, but that's sufficient for kind of the understanding that we need today. And what it does is all traffic from the browser goes through Fiddler, and all responses from the internet or from the server, they also go through Fiddler before they get back to the browser. So Fiddler is able to mediate that traffic and determine whether or not it should send responses through or send requests through. And if it wants to, it can even manipulate them in transit. And so that is something that gives us the ability to make changes on the phone that we otherwise would not be able to make. And so we can load a web page on the phone, but we can load it through Fiddler, so we can actually have the phone use Fiddler as a proxy server. And as a result, we can actually set up what are called autoresponders using Fiddler, which is basically a cached copy of a server response that we can manipulate and then serve that cached copy to the phone whenever it requests the file from the server. So Lee Bridgewater is saying, do you use virtual machines or VMs to debug browser issues? I noticed the remote desktop, was it RDP, or remote desktop protocol or remote desktop program earlier when debugging sites. I do, depending on what the URL is, I may use a VM. First step is always to see, can I repro the issue with the software that's already on my machine? In this case, in particular, I'm broadcasting a 1920 by 1080 video onto the web, and so I'm using some of my system resources here. So firing up maybe like VMware or something like that would be a little more costly. It'd be a little bit more burden on my machine than I'm really looking to do right now. So instead, I'm going to try and see, can I repro the issue with the software that's already on my machine? So in this case, the individual, Massimo, reported an issue with nasa.gov on the mobile device, but the edge that's on here is the same edge that's on here. So if I can repro, the only difference really, there are some accessibility differences that might control, text and layout on the phone that don't exist on the desktop, because where the phone is, smaller form factor, you might want to, increase the size of fonts and stuff, and that's not necessarily the case with the desktop. So there's going to be some subtle differences in the operating system and stuff that can leak into your web experience, but for the most part, it's the same browser. And as a result, if I can get the desktop browser to behave like the mobile browser, that's fantastic, because then I can use the desktop dev tools to debug the experience. Something you don't get with the mobile browser. So in the case of virtual machines, if I can't repro it using the software that's already on my machine, then obviously I have to find another approach. Preferably for me, I'm not a big fan of virtual machines. More often than not, I have a good internet connection. If you don't have a good internet connection, then virtual machines are just invaluable. They're priceless. And we actually have a lot of those for free. If you go to edge.ms, you can look under tools and find free virtual machines for nearly every major version of Internet Explorer, as well as builds up to 14.393, actually newer than 14.393, I believe, possibly, for Edge. Not exactly certain. 14.393 is going to be the anniversary update of Edge, which came out in July of this year, so just a couple of months ago. And we'll have virtual machines for that as well. That's presently the kind of mainstream version of Edge right now. That's the version of Edge I have on this device, my Surface Book right here. So if you need to use virtual machines, you totally can. The thing that I typically turn to, if my machine cannot reproduce the issue, then I typically turn to cloud-based solutions. So Browser Stack is probably one of my favorite solutions in the cloud. What it is a website that actually allows you to stream a web browser to your computer. That sounds a little bit weird, right? But you can actually stream a web browser to your machine. So if you're on Windows 10 and you want to check something in Safari, you can stream Safari through Edge on Windows 10, and you can use Safari remotely like you would watch, a show on Netflix or something. It's a very, very amazing concept. They stream the video to you. Your clicks and stuff are transmitted. So when you click, a left mouse button is sent to the server to communicate a left mouse button click just took place in this particular region, and that invokes the click. If you right click, same thing. You'll see your context menus appear. You can click and drag stuff around. It is a pretty amazing experience. And you're using a real version of that browser remotely through the cloud. And so browserstack.com is a service that provides that. It's not a Microsoft service, although in the past we've been very excited about it. We've handed out, trials and stuff like that for BrowserStack because we really, really do love the solution they have there. We used to have remote apps. So Azure, if you're kind of more into the Azure world, Azure has Remote App, which allows you to stream instances of apps seamlessly on your desktop. So I don't know what BlueStacks is, Rashab, but Remote App would actually allow you to have a seamlessly streamed instance of an application onto your desktop. So it would actually look like you're running Edge on your MacBook, for instance, if you wanted to. It is a window just like all your other windows, but it's actually streaming Edge through the cloud. BlueStacks is more like a VM. Yep. So it's VMs and the cloud-based solutions are very different. They kind of appeal to different people. VMs are far more performant, far better. You can boot into Parallels or something like that as well. The cloud-based solutions really only work if you have a great internet connection and a fairly beefy machine that can handle it. VMs as well. You're going to want to make sure you have plenty of memory and stuff for VMs to be very performant. So let's see. BlueStacks is full of advertisements. There are better alternatives for serious development. Yeah, again, I'm not familiar with BlueStacks, but BrowserStack is fantastic. The other great thing about BrowserStack is that you not only can browse using these remote browsers and operating systems, you can actually make it part of your testing. So if you're a JavaScript engineer, you can actually have tests that go off to Sauce Labs, which is a testing environment that's in the cloud. You can have your JavaScript tested in like 100 different browsers, real browsers too, not just some lexical parser who is which is aware of certain objects and stuff in different browsers, and it's trying to find some things for you. It's not like some type of special IDE plugin, but you can actually have your code executed in a bunch of different browsers in the cloud, and the results sent back to you, and actually being one of the determining factors for whether or not your continuous deployment or actually goes through and your build passes or fails, and your site on the web is updated or not. So it's a pretty fantastic solution out there for developers in particular. Let's see here. So yeah, I hope that answers Lee's question. You have to excuse me if I just ramble. A lot of the stuff is so exciting that the moment I start to talk about one thing, I kind of naturally segue into other, equally exciting ideas. So yeah, just let me know if you have any other questions about that in particular, and if not, we'll move forward with the reduction. So what I'm going to do is try and open up this site on my phone real quick, and then we'll open it up on the desktop as well. So I want to make sure I get this URL. That is t.co/. Okay, 4p0. I don't know if that's a 0 or an O. I'm going to go with an O for starters. Nope, that's looking fairly skinny. I'm going to go with a 0. 0. V is in Victor. D is in David. 7, 2. C as in Charlie. Z as in Xylo? No, not xylophone. That's with an X. What is Z? Zebra? So we'll go with that. And D as in David, or Delta. Okay. Really need to learn the phonetic alphabet and memorize that thing. So, okay. This is what I'm seeing. This is not at all uncommon. The web page takes up about half of the device's screen. Zulu. Thank you, Illusion. So this takes up about half of the device's screen, and yeah, doesn't really look all that great. More often than not, what causes this is something further down the page that is too wide. So I'm curious if we just keep scrolling, if we will. This is a really long page. Look at there. So we have a long string of contiguous characters that does not include a wrapping character. So this is kind of what we were expecting. We're expecting to scroll down the page and find something that is very wide. And this happens to be text. I know that whenever we look at text, there is an issue across the web where websites use a non-standard form of wrapping. They use a non-standard combination of properties and values in CSS to cause wrapping. I don't know when we started looking at this. I'm putting down 28 minutes into the broadcast, but we'll see. So, what happens is all across the web, there are websites. There's a word break property in CSS. And let's see, Rashab, WPX box, you have to give me some context there. I don't know what that is a reference to. Is it a streaming service or a cloud testing service? So there's the CSS property word break. And so if we were to go up and do a quick search for MDN word space break, that's the Mozilla Developer Network, kind of the de facto standard when it comes to online documentation. What did I do? Okay. So I'm going to do MDN word break. That brings up the very first result, and there's a couple different associated properties with this as well. But what you're going to find is word break has basically 3 keyword values. You can use normal, break all, or keep all. And Edge and IE and all browsers support all of those. The thing is that other browsers, some of them have actually introduced break word as a value as well. Unfortunately, break word is not a standard value. It's not in a spec, to my knowledge, However, it somehow became a very popular pattern on the web. And as a result, you have a lot of websites that use word break to break word. And Stack Overflow has used this in the past. Mobile sites in particular oftentimes use it. And as a result, you get that issue that we're seeing with this NASA site right here, where the text just doesn't wrap because there's no indication of when and how it should wrap. And so if you use word break break word, you should probably stop doing that. You should probably use word break break all, or word wrap break word. I believe you can use the break word property on there. So if I go to word wrap does support, or actually overflow wrap is the new approach now. So overflow wrap does use break word, so you could use that if you wanted to. Okay, so Rashab is actually saying he notices WPXbox.com also contains the same issue where there is an overly large element that actually causes this kind of half-screen rendering, because half of the content on the page, the white column there, is the actual page itself, and that is sized a bit further down than the actual text here is, put it a little bit closer, the actual text there is not wrapping, so it causes the entire page to be kind of, everything on the page is wrapping with the exception of that one line right there, so you wind up with that problem. We could check out WPXbox.com. We'll do that, WPXbox.com, and I think we're going to see a similar issue here, according to Rashab. And so we'll open that up. Actually, it looks like it's working fairly well for me, unless there's a page deeper in there that I'm not noticing. So, WPXbox looks like it's working just fine for me. In fact, let me go ahead and do this. I'll open up, project my screen, and we'll just expand out. We'll show the screen here. So this is what I'm seeing with WPXbox.com. Seems like it's working just fine. If we go back to the NASA site, solarsystem.nasa.gov, here we will notice this issue right there. That text right there causes the problem. Not to mention everything is kind of blown out in size. And so this is something that we've seen in the past too on many different websites. This is actually one of the accessibility issues that happens on the phone. So if we were to go up here, go to settings, and inside settings, ease of access, and more options, this is actually at, text scaling is already at 100%. So the size, the reason that's so large is that I'm zoomed in a little bit. So, and that's because we have that, actually more text down here that is not wrapping. I bet if we pull this up on the desktop, we could probably repro this issue and we can look at exactly how to fix this using a different word break property value. So let's do that. I'm going to minimize this real quick, and I'm going to pull up, let's see here. So we'll pull up the other device here. This is my other machine. Let me just log into this real quick, and we'll look at this on the desktop. Okay. So this is the site that we're looking at right now. This is actually the reduction that we did not too long ago, the last video. We're going to, actually Rashab is sending me a picture on Twitter of the issue. Interesting. Yeah, I'll check that out again here in just 1 second, Rashab. We'll see if we can repro it using the same kind of solution. So let's look at what else we got going on. Okay, so I'm going to pull up this URL right now. I'll leave up this JS bin just in case we want to come and hit that again later. And I want to pull up this particular URL. This one was, let me look at my phone here real quick. Solar System, let's do Solar System, NASA, and this is Mars rover views. Let's see if we can find it like this. Where is the URLs? So look here, it might actually be one of the more recent things on here, or we might be able to repro it with just about any article on here. So I suspect we are waiting for things to load in images. Maybe not. Maybe we just don't get to see anything. This might be a separate bug that we can reduce. Because it's looking like nothing wants to render for me. Let's see here. I'm going to try and type in the rest of this URL. Mars rover view spectacular layered. Let's see here. There's definitely something wrong here. I'm tempted to look, and this actually, you know what this could be? This could be user agent string sniffing. So if I come in here and I give myself a different UA string, because now I'm looking at the possibility of a couple different bugs, and I'm trying to think which one do I want to come in and start to mess with first. So let's change our UA string to that of IE11. Let's see if these pictures appear. Because it might be that they are loading a format that we just simply don't support. Actually, I'm still not seeing it. So let's try another one. Let's do Mozilla Firefox. This is interesting. So I'm still not seeing what they're showing here. One thing I have to obviously do is test it inside of another browser to see if the issue is actually with Edge or if the issue is with the site in general. Now, I would hope that NASA is going to have a pretty solid development team and not have too many problems, but you never know. So let's see if we kind of navigate backwards, and we'll open up another browser here. So I'm going to open up a second browser now. And we're going to see what happens when we view this elsewhere. So let's see, paste and go. And where's my XSplit? Here we go. Okay, so let's check it out in a different browser. So this is inside. This is inside Brave. Let's turn the shields off, and so that way we're not blocking any potential third-party resources that might be of importance to the page. And it is interesting. I'm not seeing anything here either. This is getting really bizarre. So let's try this. Yeah, so let me try this. It's solarsystem.nasa.gov. Maybe the whole site is just kind of broken for everybody. Solarsystem.nasa.gov. So let me know if you're inside chat right now. Click that link and see if you can see anything at all, or if you're seeing exactly what I'm seeing, because I'm not seeing anything. There's a lot of content missing, it looks like. Let me try it in another browser over here on my desktop. It looks even worse in Chrome. So yeah, this might just derail our debugging for a bit. They're clearly using some type of templating system, because you notice inside Edge, what you see for just a moment are what we call handlebar templates. So if I were to refresh, let's see if we're looking at my desktop right now. If I were to come back over here and refresh this, what you see for a moment, actually it's not showing it now. There we go, sub.page title. So they're actually using some template inside there. You'll notice those little curly braces and then sub.page title just before it gets processed and turned into actual DOM. So it looks like NASA is just broken everywhere. Okay, well, I'm going to ignore this page then. As much as I want to dig into this and see if we can't figure out why this is happening, You know, if it's a templating thing, okay, I got to do it. I have to look. Let's see here. So, okay, this is looking like Angular. Okay, so they're using Angular. I've got to look. I've got to go through and figure out why this is not working. So it looks like there's an invalid character right here. Syntax error, obviously, inside. Oh, well, it's during the Angular parsing. So they've got probably. Oh, we apologize, but the planetary information you requested is lost in space at the moment. So they actually might even have, beyond a mere templating issue, they may actually have some server resource files down. So I'm going to, these two things right here, invalid character usually is indicative of you make an HTTP request that Angular thinks is going to be JSON, or that it's going to be HTML or something. More often than not, it's JSON. And the response that comes back is actually like a 404 or something, which is not going to be JSON data. It's not going to be JavaScript object notation. It's going to be HTML or something like that. And as a result, that it attempts to be parsed, but the exception is thrown, syntax error, because the very first character is not valid JSON. And so that's probably what is happening right here. We're probably seeing a 404 or something inside the network. If we were to scroll down, oh, I just saw a 404 right there. So here we have, that's news image. Text HTML. So there, it looks like they might actually have a couple resources down right now. There's another 404 as well. So this is an SVG. That's not going to matter a whole lot. Definitely some issues with NASA right now. So yeah, I'm not quite well. So. Thomas is pointing out right now that the curly braces into the image URL, there used to be an issue where when you put curly braces into an attribute, it would actually cause problems where the browser would parse it and curly braces would be thrown out as an invalid value of the attribute itself. And so you'd see this inside things like, in many Angular applications, you'd see this inside Internet Explorer and even early versions of Edge, where if you had image source equals and then you try to interpolate a value to put the image source inside there, what would happen is when the browser is parsing your markup and it comes across the curly brace, it would say that's not a legal HTML value for the image source attribute. And so it would just drop the whole value entirely, create an image element that has an empty source value. And so whenever the model changes, it can't go through and update that image source. When the variables change, they can't update the image source. And so what Angular has was, I believe, you could do on your Angular, it wasn't a decorator. I'm totally blanking on the right word here, but there was basically another set of attributes you could use. You wouldn't have to use source equals curly brace. You could do ng-source equals curly brace. And then that ng-source kind of serves as a template for future updates to the source attribute, because the source attribute is going to be governed by, powers that are beyond the scope of what Angular can touch or even handle. And as a result, Angular would have to work around that by having a non-standard attribute that it can kind of put the source template into, and then anytime that model changes, they can update the source attribute from that ng source attribute, which acts as just kind of like a template. So it's kind of a little placeholder. But I think what's happening is what Thomas is mentioning. Actually, what a couple people are mentioning, Illusion MH also pointed out, is there's an HTTP request for a certain endpoint. The content type of that endpoint is assumed to be JSON, and it's not. It's coming back 404, which would be HTML, and as a result, you can't parse HTML as JSON. So you could actually call JSON.parse and pass it a string of HTML, and you'll probably see that syntax error get thrown as the first exception. So let's try to work past this. I'm going to try and still, in spite of these issues on the nasa.gov site, I'm going to try and pull up the URL for this particular article. So this is going to be, and it's a fairly long URL, so I may even mess this up once, but let's see. It's going to be /news/2016-09-09 Mars rover views spectacular layered what? I want to know. rock formations. So we pull this up, we should see the news brief. Sure enough, we do. Okay, so this is great. We can probably reduce this. Actually, not even reduce this, but I bet we could get this to break for us on the desktop. So what I want to do is I want to put my phone out of the way. I don't think I'm going to have to use it. And I'm going to reduce the size of the browser window down to some kind of phone dimensions. And so I'm going to pull up the browser window right here. We're going to reduce it down to phone dimensions. You notice the what happens with the site. This actually, I'm thinking the size of the text here might actually be media queries and not related to the issue that exists on Windows Phone. So this is the size of the text here. I want to come down and we're going to find, well, let's go ahead and change the UA string too. So we want the site to think that we are a mobile phone. So we'll do Windows 10 Mobile here, just underneath the emulation tab. That's going to refresh the viewport, re-request the site, and then scroll us down from there. So we can see a little bit of a gap over here. That actually looks like it's unrelated. And I'm not seeing the same issue, although I am seeing some really weird rendering here on this. So I believe what I may do is just kind of patch this traffic through Fiddler and change it there. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to close my DevTools. That's going to restore the site back to the desktop profile. You can see there was our templates. And I need to set up Fiddler on my phone now. So what I'm going to do is I'm inside the VM right now, or actually the remote desktop right now. And I'm going to open up Fiddler. And inside Fiddler, I believe I already have it set up for proxy connections. So I'm going to go up to Tools. Actually, I'm going to turn off capturing so we're no longer intercepting traffic. I'm going to go to Tools, Telerik Fiddler Options, and Connections. And let's see, we are already set up to allow remote computers to connect, port 8888. And all we really need to do is set up the proxy on my phone here to go to that same device. So in this case, I want to show my phone again. And we're going to go through and set up the proxy on here to go through Fiddler. So I'm going to pull this down, go to my settings. My Wi-Fi is actually where I want to be. So if I go back up here, MSFT open, and I long hold on that, I might be able to get in here to manage. MSFT. Oh, that's not what I want, actually. It's right here. So I'll long press on this and go to Edit. And then Proxy, I'm going to set up manual setup. The address is simple. It's going to be the IP address of the device that I'm going through. Looks like Thomas is actually digging into the NASA parsing issue as well, and is mentioning some unescaped quotes in the JSON. So could be some items there as well. So we're going to go and type in 10. I can see the IP address at the top of the screen here, 106.179, and wrap it up with 216. And you're going to notice with Telerik Fiddler, the port that it uses is 8888. You can see that right there. So we're going to go to port 8888. Actually, I think the port, yeah, is down here. So we should be good now. What I want to do is close Edge. So in this case, I have Edge opened up right here. And I'm going to go and open that up from the beginning again. So you notice, let's see. You can now see that there are some requests right here for the Solar System NASA Gov. I'm going to delete all of this, turn on capturing again, and refresh my phone. So let's see here. You can see right here, I'm going to press the refresh button. And there is the request over here going through my computer. So I'm going to decode. Actually, I already have decoding selected. So this button right here decodes all of the requests. So what I can do is just come over here, drag this into my autoresponders. So you want to make sure that unmatched requests pass through and that you have autoresponder enabled. So that's this tab right here. I can remove all this stuff. This is from some of the older reductions we were working on. And I'm going to right click on this and go to edit response, text view, and down here I'm going to select a different application to edit this this code. I'm going to select Visual Studio Code and press OK. So this opens up the page inside Visual Studio Code. This is now the source for the site that we're looking at. I'm going to beef up the size of this just a little bit, and we're going to go down, and you can see where in the page here, the portion of the page that's causing the problems for us is this long email address, Preston Dykes, I think. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that. There's also this link right here, marsjpl.nasa.gov/MSL, and then scrolling up a bit further, we're looking for things that hang over that white rectangle. That looks to be about it. So let's just go down one more time. See what all we have that's contributing to this. So we have that Mars JPL NASA Gov MSL, Preston's email address, and we have some stuff down here as well, like Mars reconnaissance, orbiter, all this good stuff. That's just kind of blurring, mixing into one another. You know what we might also want to do is to make sure there's a content viewport meta tag inside here. So what I want to do is, it doesn't look like they have one. I want to make sure that I add one. So what I'm going to do is add a meta tag. Meta name equals viewport, and we'll set the content equal to width equals device width, and we'll save this. Now I want you to notice one thing whenever we go back into Fiddler and we check out the request responses. So I'm going to delete the current history right here, and I can also, what's happening is the context menu is getting obscured. So I can also close this window, and I'm going to fire off these requests again. So I'm on my phone, bring that up here, and hit refresh. You'll notice that page is now blue. That means it's being served from my autoresponders, and it's not actually the server response. We didn't actually send out this request. Rashab, good night. Thank you very much for hanging out. Hopefully this was helpful for you. So let's see. Lee is asking, can you demonstrate how you use developer tools within Edge on a website with a timeline and refresh a web page to capture the results in real time? Yeah, we'll do that in just 1 second. Let me kind of wrap up this one real quick. So you notice that our response that went through, oops, I think my mouse stopped working for me. The response is actually the autoresponder, hence the blue color. So now whenever we look at this, we still have the same issue. The device width is still very small. Doesn't look like that really is going to help us a whole lot. Let's try this one more time just to be certain. Starts out the right size, but then, oh wait, maybe that did help. So let's try this again. One more time, we just refresh. And it snaps up to the correct width. So let's just scroll down and see what happens to those links. The text is still very large. And let's see. So those links are towards the bottom of the page. Let's go all the way down there. They're still missing some stuff. There's some, clearly some broken resources here. Mars JPL, obviously it's no longer hanging off the side. You can still get over there to it, but the full page is actually zooming in for us. Let's go ahead and take care of this issue right here. It doesn't look like the viewport meta tag is going to help us a whole lot in this case, but it's definitely worth putting in there. So I need to actually figure out what's up with my mouse. I'm going to unplug it real quick and plug it back in. Although I'm using my other USB port, so I don't think... Normally, I'm going to unplug the phone actually. I don't want to do this. So there's this issue that I face sometimes where I have to unplug my mouse and plug it into the other USB port. There we go, and now I have my mouse back. So I'll plug the phone back into the port that my phone or my mouse was in, and that way we can get the phone back on the screen. Okay, so now that we have that, I'm going to go ahead and delete all this again. We're going to make another modification to the code, and I need to find out where I have to resize the, here we go, resize the remote window. And we'll maximize the code, and I want to add at the very end, just before the body, so just before I close out the head, we're going to do this. We're going to say style. So we're going to add some custom styling inside here. And we're going to do on the body, we're going to write body word break all, and I'm going to add important to that just so it doesn't get clobbered by any other styles. Okay, so now we can pull up the phone and see if this resolves the issue for us. So let's go back over here to Fiddler. We don't really care about this a whole lot. Let's look at the phone and let's refresh. So now we're going to get that autoresponder again with our custom CSS inside there. So the size is still getting manipulated by that. You scroll down. That's it right there. What I do want to do now, I'm going to open up the code here and check out where that link is. So let's do Control F and we'll just look for the @ sign that was in there, right? Nope, that's just mars.jpl. It's interesting, it's actually not finding it. Let's see, .gov/MSL for more information about Curiosity. You know, that could actually be loaded in asynchronously. Information, yeah, I think that might actually, this content inside here might be coming from someplace other than the page. So let's see, a hillside outcrop. We'll do a search for that. Okay, so this is the issue. The body itself, if we come in here and we look at this, so this portion right here, and I'll maximize this because this is going to take us a bit of a second to look at. This is Twitter Bootstrap, I believe. And so these classes right here, like visible XS, that means this should be visible on extra small. It should be visible on small, should be visible on medium, should be visible on large. Navbar brand, so call 6 like this, that looks like Twitter Bootstrap. Call medium 12, so that's on medium sized displays. This mobile header should take up 12 columns. So we got Bootstrap inside here. We scroll a little bit down. You notice now we're starting to look into the Angular directives. That's what I was thinking of. So these are going to be, actually this isn't a directive here. This is just a value that is inside of an Angular component that is going to be kind of interpolated and replaced later on. We have the Angular click event right here. Here's that p title sub page title. So this is all going to be replaced as well. I'm assuming they're pulling in the content of the article after all is said and done, and then populating the DOM. So this is all going to be coming in through some type of JSON request or something like that. We can quickly confirm that probably up here inside the header. There's likely a piece of code that identifies which article we're on and then is responsible for making that request. So here's jQuery, Angular resource, Angular analytics. Let's see. This could be it. That's the document location protocol. What is A? So A is, where is A? I don't know. Okay, A is document. So they're creating a script element. They're getting the very first script element inside the document. They're setting the script element source equal to the document location protocol, and then forwarding that to script crazy egg pages. I don't know what that is. That's that's interesting. Crazy egg. Okay. I don't know exactly what this purpose right here is, but they're adding a bit of a cache buster to the end of the URL, which is a randomized number that will make sure you don't ever request the same URL twice to get around some of the caching, aggressive caching issues that might exist on some pages. But in this case, let's see here. Here's their Angular module right here. So this is going to be SSE. I don't know what that's a solar system something or another. Solar system exploration. And they identify presumably something somewhere around here, which article we ought to be calling on. So if we were to check, back here, I suspect we would see there's fonts. So CSS. Let's pull it over just a bit more and look at the content of this right here. Applications. So this is jQuery, Bootstrap, Universal Federated Analytics. That's probably not it either. I actually don't see them requesting like a JSON file or anything inside here. Let's see. It might also just be the fact that cache is an issue. So let me try and refresh this again, see what we get. I want to put something at the, let's see here. Yeah, I'll be all right. I was thinking about putting something at the very end of the URL to cache bust it myself, but let's not do that. Let's just see how this works. Because I'm actually not seeing, so here's Angular resource. I'm not seeing them request the content. Do have some HTML files down here, Chartbeat. Partial page. Now I'm curious what this is right here. Let's see. Oh, there's a bit of a discussion inside the chat room there. So I wonder if, I want to make sure that the code changes I'm making are even reflecting in the page itself. So let's come over here. I'm going to do body. We'll do a border of 10 pixels, solid pink. We'll save that and see if this is reflected inside here. So let's refresh this page. Actually does not look like it. So maybe I need to not make the changes inside here. So I'm going to close this, maximize here, and we'll just make a real quick modification to the document through this route. So edit the response, we'll do a syntax view. That is a plugin you can download for Fiddler the syntax view. It's a lot better than the text view. And we'll go down to just ahead of the body, so the very closing end of the head element. And I'll do a style body border 1 pixel. Actually, no, we'll do something like that. 100 pixels, solid pink. And let's see if this works, because I just want to make sure that we're actually seeing the code changes that we're making on the document itself. Okay, so now we're seeing the giant pink border on the body element. This is what I was hoping for. So we weren't seeing that before, but now we can probably make that change. Let's go ahead and try word break. Break word. I might have to put, actually I'm going to put this word break break all. I might have to put a bang after that just to make sure that it's not overwritten by anything else. Let's see here. So we should tell it to break whenever necessary on anything. So that definitely had an impact on the page. You notice that now words will wrap in the middle of themselves. Just want to refresh this one more time and see if this is wrapping for us. Okay, so this no longer causes the page to be absurdly sized. What we could do is we could actually put this on anchors and say for anchors, we want word break break all. Because I think it's only links that are actually causing the problem for us. So here is the site now with only links having word break break all. Oh, there's still something down there. Let's see here. It is those links that are loading in after the fact. So I mean, if those are inside of an iframe, that would cause a problem too. So, okay. Let's refresh this one more time. I do want to add a bit of code to identify any iframes on the page. So let's do that. Let's do iframe. Because if we have an iframe in there, obviously any styles that we change on the parent document are not going to bleed into the iframe necessarily. So this looks like it's still not wrapping those links for us. So I'm going to go ahead and add the bang to the end of the link just to make sure that this is the used value. Basically, CSS is the cascading style sheets, which means the browser will consider various different style rules before it determines what the final style rule is. And as a result, your code can get clobbered by somebody else's code. If you put exclamation mark important at the end of your values, those should be preserved and given precedence over other items. I am still seeing, this is so interesting, I'm still seeing, okay, this is not a link, so that's one of the reasons why we're going to be having this problem. Let's go ahead and look at this on desktop real quick and see if we can identify what portions of the document are loading those parts of the page. So where is my edge? Okay, here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and resize this just a bit. And then we're going to jump down and start to inspect some of the parts of the page that that we're seeing in the mobile site. So those are down towards the bottom. We have this portion right here. That looks like a link. Let's inspect that element. Sure enough, that is a link down here. It is, let's see, it doesn't look like it's inside of an iframe. We can see there's an outline on here, text decoration, underline, all this good stuff. There definitely are. So we mentioned media queries before that actually are making the font size really big. We can leave those alone, but those are definitely going to impact the legibility of the site for us as well. Here's a fixed line height. That will cause it to have some issues with accessibility on Windows Mobile as well, unfortunately. I don't see anything inside here. Let's go ahead and we can scroll this element into view. I'm going to pull up this and we'll just do $0. So $0.0.scroll into view. That brings that element back into the view of the viewport. And I do want to set some alternative styles for that to see if we can't get that to hide itself, or to wrap itself rather. So let's do word break all. So that did not break, and that might be because there's something even longer than this. And I bet there is. Yep. So this fella right down here, let's inspect that. Okay, so this paragraph is way down here inside the credits information. So what should we use to identify this? ngbind HTML, widgets, credit info, data credit. So this whole portion right here, so a span immediately inside of a paragraph, that should also have a word break all. We do that, the page magically becomes a little bit better here. The JPL portion though is still going to be big because I don't think we fixed that. We did. Why is that not working? It's interesting, it's still not, so there's something that is still larger than this that is not causing it to wrap. I believe. Let's see here. If we delete the element, we can totally see if it causes the whole page to reflow. So I deleted that, the page is still really big. So there's something else in here. Let's go down, see what it could be. Here we go. So again, we're dealing with some long links. Inspect the element here. We're looking at, what section is this? This is the list items. So we could do that inside this word break all. We want to do this on anchors, list items, and any span that has a P immediately inside of it, or any P that is immediately inside of a span. So I'm going to save this. I think we can get rid of the frame code real quick. So we have anchors, list items, and any paragraphs that are immediately inside of a span. We're going to do word break all. Let's see if that has a positive impact on the rendering of this page. So we'll refresh it. And let's see what we get. Looks like we might still have something bleeding over. This is interesting. I'm wondering almost as well if the problem could be caused. You notice everything is broken, so this stuff is not wrapping. The only thing that's wrapping is, September is wrapping there, but that's just normal text. We can take care of that here in a second. This is the portion that's wrapping. So let's go and re-examine that markup one more time. So I'm going to request this page again, and let's make sure that that markup is well understood. So Renaissance. Here is the, what was this one? This was the paragraph immediately inside the span. I don't see my styles being applied here, though. So let's look at this. Yeah, this is a little bit tough on the phone here. It's so ALI span, word break, break all. Let's put important inside there, just in case. Thomas, have a nice evening. Thanks for hanging out. Hopefully we'll have this wrapped up here in just a couple of minutes. This one is being kind of a pain. So I'm going to open this up on both the desktop and the phone again. That link right there is still being a pesky one. So let me look at this link. So this is there it is right there. Inspect that. And again, this is, okay, so this is an anchor. Is my word break, break all not working on this anchor then? So we should expect to see that style down here in the cascade, but maybe overwritten by something. I'm not even seeing it in there, actually. I do want to make sure we're not inside of any iframes or anything. Let's see. Let's try and modify this just a bit. And instead of A, let's go with center. Save that. And we'll try this again. This one is taking a bit longer than it really should, though, with this type of layout issue. Actually, this might have been, that might have done it. So we're basically trying to target the elements that have that long overhang of content. They have the many contiguous non-white space, non-breaking characters. So you notice there's still a small hang, and it's probably going to be that instance of the word September or something down there that was really big. Where was that? But you notice all this stuff is wrapping now. Yeah, so September is the big guy down there that's still hanging over, causing a problem. If we were to change the body font size, across the board, what we did see inside here is that whenever we're on a mobile site, there are media queries down here that set the font size to just be a bit too big. So we notice right here when the min width, let's see, when the max device width is no more than 414 pixels, the font size is just a bit too big. It's about 50 pixels, and so that included with the margin here on the left side causes September to push itself off of there just a bit. And so I'm trying to see, maybe we can find out where September is written inside here. Let's try and do a quick find on the page. September. It's in the header, and it's down here inside the credits. So if we were to come inside the credits area and identify, that is feature credits. So we would just we'll add a style that drops that font size just to confirm that that is the issue. So style feature credits font size, we'll make it 20 pixels and add important so that we don't have our styles clobbered by theirs. And save that. And now we can pull up the site again here real quick and see if that actually resizes that September portion, making the site render properly inside the window. So that looks like there still might be something pushing it. Actually, no, it doesn't. I don't know. It's tough to say. I have a black frame around my phone, so I'm trying to see if the black frame is all I see over there, or if the page itself. It looks like the page itself has some type of slight hang. So let's scroll up and see if we find anything kind of bleeding over that edge. Because it might be that there's another string of text up there that's causing that. Yep. So this word, understanding, is too wide. It really comes down to the font size is just too big. 50 pixels, yeah, it's just too big. And so what we probably need to figure out is, do we need to implement a new wrapping property that allows, in this case, what do? You can't really, do you wrap the G by itself on understanding? Does it look like understanding Goff, ancient sand dunes? It's really kind of a tough problem right here. In this case, this is probably the type of thing that the NASA site should work on. Yeah, they need to. This would be the type of problem that we'd want to outreach to the engineers working on the nasa.gov domain and just say, hey, you should probably check the font size whenever the page is under 400 pixels wide, because some of the words are too big. They're too long, and they wind up causing overflow. And so I'm curious if I check this on another phone. I'm going to open this up inside of another browser real quick and just see exactly what it looks like. So I'm going to go to Solar System NASA Gov. Solar System. And if anybody else is out there, if you have an Android phone or anything like that, or an iPhone, please do pull up the URL. Let me know how they handle this real quick. NASA.gov, I believe that's right. Yep. I don't want to type that giant text inside there though. Let's go to news, main. Okay, and here I found the article. So I've got the article now loaded up, and I'm going to minimize all this stuff on my screen real quick and go back to the primary view, which is scene 1. And I've got the article now on my mobile browser here. The font size is much smaller, so you notice they don't actually bump it up to 50 pixels on this. So the actual, and that's probably because of the device width. So the Windows Phone is wider than the iPhone. As a result, the Windows Phone is going to get the 50 pixel font. The iPhone is going to get the slightly smaller font. As a result, the iPhone is going to render just fine. One thing I could try real quick, we could pull out that media query, or we could override it real quick and see if that causes the Windows Phone to render a little bit better. So let's do that real quick. So I'm pulling this up again. I want to look at the page real quick. The page has got that media query over on the side. It makes it nice and easy for us to see what's going on. It's over here inside content responsive.css. So we'll pull that up. And we're going to look inside here for 50px. So I'll just do a quick search for 50px. And here is the media query right here. So the screen, as long as we're on a screen, and the max device width is 414px, and the screen, and well, they got kind of redundancy here. So screen and max device width 414px, max width and max device width. So this is kind of the issue. This is one of the issues that we're kind of facing right now. So this CSS file right here, we'd want to provide a different font size for this particular media query. So we're going to copy this media query, and we're going to overwrite the body portion of this. So let's do that. Let's go down here. We'll create a new style tag. And let's drop in the body media query. So all this does is it lets you write conditional CSS based upon the dimensions of the window itself, of the browser window, or of the device in this case. And we're going to write body font size 40 pixels. So we'll drop it down just 10 pixels and see if this actually helps us out just a bit. So let's see if that reflects whenever we load up the page. So we should see slightly smaller fonts, about 25% reduction in size. Or actually, what was that, like 18% reduction? I don't know if that is smaller or not right there. Well, let's try to go even smaller and do 30 pixels. So MaxDeck is saying a smaller font on Galaxy SS or S7 too. So one thing we might actually try to do is see what is the reported viewport size in this case. So why am I seeing... You know what I really want to do at this point is I really want to know how big is the viewport reporting itself to be. So we added inside here, I can actually do it down here as well. We added that meta tag, meta name equals viewport, content equals width is equal to device width. And we can see what impact, if any, this has on the page. And then we can explicitly provide our own custom device width to see how that affects the media queries. So it doesn't appear like there's anything happening as a result of this, but one thing we'll do is we'll come in, and I'm going to set, instead of device width being the width, I'm going to set the width to 450, because that'll be larger than the media query that they have on the page. Let's see if that results in slightly smaller text. It does not. What in the world? This is bizarre. Let's try 800 real quick and see if that impacts it in any way, shape, or form. It should. This should definitely impact it. It doesn't look like it is, though. It looks like I keep getting the same exact response, though. This is interesting. The request is going through Fiddler. We know that because of the blue session right there. But for some reason, my meta viewport is not being accepted. So let's look at that one more time here. So we have meta name equals viewport, content equals width equals 800, maybe px. Let's try that. Let's put something more explicit in there. See if that gives us the results we're hoping for. Because it should be, no, it doesn't look like it. This is really odd. If we rotate on the side, do we get smaller text? looks like it. So, well, maybe not. Yeah, this is definitely something we have to look a little bit more into. It's one of those points where it would be nice to have developer tools on the mobile device. You know, we do have, I'm trying to think, you typically have to run it, so we have Vorlon.js. Let me look at Vorlon real quick. I don't think I'll be able to spin up an instance of it or anything, but we can look at Vorlon.js just as a bit of an example. So what Vorlon.js lets you do is actually have remote tooling for the pages you're looking at. Let's see. So we can get started. This is not going to help me a whole lot here. To check this out later on, I suppose. But this might actually help me, you know, reduce the issues on the mobile device right now, because the thing that's difficult is not having the developer tools interacting in real time with the document object model on the phone itself. So this requires a bit of kind of, you know, circumventing that limitation by using autoresponders. The autoresponder is obviously it's going through a different machine of mine, and it could be some type of very easy setup or configuration that I'm totally blanking on because we're streaming. That's just how demos work. But there's definitely something happening here, and it doesn't seem like it's allowing me to override my styles for some reason. So like if I were to set a style up here that told the body to set the font size of everything to 12 pixels and do not let it be overridden, I would expect that to have effect on the page and everything to be 12 pixels in size and not be overridden. But that is not the case. Or is it? That does not appear. Well, it looks like it's okay. Looks like it is actually the case for the paragraphs on here. Oh, what is that? There's another another CSS property that actually disables some of the mobile resizing stuff. What is that one? Let me see here. Let's see. MS text scaling adjust, I think. I think it might be MS text size adjust property. Let me see if I can turn that off. So we're going to do that. We're going to try one more thing here. And I'm going to do up here inside the body, MS text size adjust to none. And let's see if this has a positive impact. We obviously try to do some helpful things when you're on a mobile browser. It does not appear to be impacting it. Let's see here. MS text size adjust. So what this does is whenever you load up the mobile site, you can see I'm starting to like getting a little frazzled here. Whenever you load up the mobile site, we make some modifications to different types of elements on here. So these, the large text here, finely layered rock layers within Murray information, blah, blah, blah. This is H1s, these are titles, and then we have paragraphs here below those. And we size them differently. We size lists differently. We do a bunch of things to try and make the mobile experience better. Unfortunately, that doesn't always work. So I'm trying to think, we do have support for this property, MS text size adjust. But for some reason that is not working for me here. I need to let me turn off the font size portion here. And turn off all of this stuff. I'm going to leave the, let's turn off the width 800px. I'll leave it just body MS text size adjust none. Let's see again if this maybe works. It doesn't look like it. It looks like it's still kind of messing up on me here. Yeah, this is interesting. Huh. Text size adjust should be working. I can try to pull the prefix off of there, but I don't think that is going to help. No, it looks like it's not. The size should still, the site should be very differently rendered. Well, it's, yeah, this is interesting. I'm gonna have to probably put a sticky note on this one and revisit it later. MS text size adjust should be working, but for some reason it is not. I'm not sure why. Let's put important on there. I'm really grasping at this point because this is kind of got me puzzled as to why this is not looking the way I expect it to. Let me add inside here as well. I'm going to add that viewport back, and if this doesn't work, I'm going to have to put a sticky note on this one and just deal with it later on whenever I'm not under the heat of public surveillance here. So viewport content equals width equals device width. Okay, let's try this one more time. I know my autoresponder is working. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to work again. The size is still getting adjusted. Yep, okay, I'm going to have to hold off on this one, unfortunately, and see if we can't figure this out another way. MS text size adjust. That should work. That should totally work. I could try it on the HTML element, maybe. The other thing I would probably try is to place that style someplace else in the document, but inside the head it should be fine. Let's try it on HTML. See if that has any impact. Nope. Well, this is kind of what the this is how it is sometimes. For some reason, this is totally eluding me. I'm not quite sure why. This property should resolve some of these issues, but it is not. It's still making them very, very large. Kind of striking me with dumbfoundness and confusion. So we already know that the one of the issues is the text can overhang the page and cause it. Why is this? Is this trying to do something different on me now? Whenever the text can overhang the page, I suspect the device width is being reported as less than 414. Which causes the text to be rendered at 50 pixels in size, and that combined with the other line height, font size issues on Windows Mobile may be the cause here. This is completely baffling me, though. To be completely honest, there are a couple things that I'm doing right now that I suspect are not working for some obvious reason, but maybe I've just got some tunnel vision, which happens every now and then. You start to focus too closely on a single issue, and as a result, something very simple just kind of eludes you until you bring somebody else into the mix to look at the problem with you. So in this case, Max is mentioning, so the dash before, as Lee is asking, the dash before, this is a common syntax for vendor prefixes, dash, vendor prefix, dash. And so you'll see in some cases dash WebKit, dash. I don't think WebKit text size adjust is going to do anything for us here, but we could try. I believe it's still an MS proprietary property. Yeah, this is, I'm kind of at my wit's end on this one. I have to hold off on this one. Now, I was literally just talking to Francois Remy about this a couple weeks back, and I sat down and we had a site that was acting kind of in the same way, and we wrote that one line of code, that single line, and as a result, it fixes it. What happens is, whenever the Windows Phone device loads up the page, it tries to make it look better for a mobile device. And it oftentimes does a really great job of it. It makes paragraphs and headings and stuff bigger, resizes certain things to make them larger. But you can opt out of that. And you can opt out of it by using the MS size, text size adjust property along with the value of none. Or you can give it some other type of custom sizing instruction, like make it 200% instead of 150% or something. In this case, we just wrote down that line of code, and what it does is it undoes all of what the phone tries to do so that you have complete authority over the styling of your page. And for some reason, I'm writing that line of code right now, and it's not as though it's a foreign line. It's very well understood. I understand what it means and everything, but it's not actually having the impact that I was hoping it would have. And I'm just totally blown away as to why. So yeah, it is completely baffling me here. But that's okay. We are at 4:19 anyway. This is probably kind of wrapping up the end of the day here. Happy to answer any other questions. If we have a few minutes, any other ideas or questions, comments. This is the last Microsoft Weekend Warrior browser debugging hackathon extravaganza for a long time. I mentioned a couple weeks ago, or maybe last week, that I'm going to be leaving Microsoft in the middle of September. So this is kind of the end of the road. Let's see. Lee Bridgewater says, please don't forget, Jonathan, could you demonstrate how you use developer tools within Edge on a website with the timeline and refreshing a web page to capture the results in real time? I'm not sure of the timeline portion, but let's see if we can explore a bit of what you're referring to here and see if you can help me understand whether or not I understand what you're asking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close down these tools, and we have a web browser opened up here. And inside the web browser, I have Vorlon.js. So what I'm going to do, if I want to make modifications to this particular web page, I can come in here and I can right-click and go to Inspect Element. Now, I mentioned before, if you don't see Inspect Element whenever you right-click, it's because the browser thinks that you're not a developer, or you haven't indicated that you're a developer. And so what you need to do first is press the F12 key on your keyboard. Once you do that, you'll get a small little prompt at the bottom of your window that informs you that Inspect Element and View Source have been added to your context menu, which is what you see right now. Whenever I right-click, I get the context menu. So what we'll wind up doing now is we'll have our developer tools opened up, and you can see inside here, I'm I can make modifications. I can select a portion of the DOM. So right here, introducing Vorlon.js. And again, DOM is just a fancy word for the web page, basically. And I can come in here and double click and I can change what this says. I can say introducing Sampson.js. And now I've modified the page here. So this is a fun way to kind of play tricks on your friends as well. If you go to a certain web page and make a modification, you can use your creativity. You can find some pranks. If we want to do, so what Lee is asking specifically about is troubleshooting loading and speed issues. So in this case, I'm going to maximize developer tools and go over to the performance tab. And the performance tab, I'm going to click start profiling. Now we know that the page is already loaded, so I want to load it again from the beginning. So I'm going to press Control-R for a refresh. And I'll wait just a few seconds, count to about 5. And I'll hit Stop Profiling to generate a report. Now you could have been watching the page back here to see when it finished. But instead I just counted to 5 because I'm really good at counting. So. The next thing I'm going to do here, this is the timeline. So this shows the full life cycle of everything we recorded. We had about 25 seconds or so of recordings. You can see we have the black bars here on the ends of the very top. We could pull those in if we wanted to isolate a particular region. And so, or you can just click and drag across here to select a portion. So right here I can see there's a lot of green. Green is styling. So that would be things like, class is changing the color of some text or something on the page. And you can see there's some minor layout, a paint, a minor layout, a paint, a timer, a layout, a paint, a layout, a paint. Layout is when the actual dimensions and locations of things on the screen changes. Paint is when we're just, basically what it says, we're painting to the screen. You can actually, whenever you click on layout, you can see what it was that was actually changing. So blue tube left, blue tube top. If we were to reduce the size of this and then come inside here, we can actually, let's see, blue tube left and Bluetooth top, I believe are going to be probably this guy right here. So tube left and tube top over here, presumably. So if we select this, that's the tube top. Okay. So it was the layout is actually happening on these, and you notice it's probably that circle that's kind of going down through there. So the performance tooling comes to give us an idea that there is something that's happening. In this case, it's a timer, so it's an animation that's drawing that ball down there. So if we were to expand this out, there's a div right here. The div is 20 pixels by 20 pixels with a border radius of 50%. And it's absolutely positioned. So that is actually going to be this background right here. So we could turn off that border radius and see if it turns it into a square. It doesn't because it's a background image. We could increase its size if we wanted to. You notice it actually starts to render multiple balls back there. So, we can identify from our performance tooling where there are animations taking place. So all along this region right here, where all of these green items are, that's all styling. And when we look at that, we identify that it's actually styling that is happening on this tube left, and tube top. So these two things right here, as well as a style calculation, which is going to be changing the style properties on data. And these are those circles that we were just looking into. So you notice we made the circle wider. We could change the border radius and all that type of stuff. And this is all driven by a timer, presumably. So what we're looking at, actually that might be a CSS, like a what would we call that? Keyframe animation. So if we come inside here with data, we can see that there's an animation here for data 2. And we could actually jump inside here and see what is data 2. So we'll fix this up a little bit and we'll do a quick search for data 2. And down here you can see where we actually say that for this element, the animation data 2 should be used. But to actually see what data 2 is, we go down just a little bit more. And here is data 2. So we see at 0%, the top is, actually this is a very complicated animation. The top is set to negative 28 pixels and the left is 8 pixels. At 3%, just a little over 3%, the top is negative 8 pixels and the left is 8 pixels. The top is 12 at 6%. It's 30 at 8.9%. So we're talking about the percent is the completion of the animation. The animation goes from 0% to 100%. The animation has the object being animated has a starting position and an ending position. So that's the 0 to 100. So when it's 3% of the way through, well, in this case, whenever it's 6.11% of the way through, the object should be 12 pixels from the top of the screen and 8 pixels left. This is actually probably relative, so it's 12 pixels from its starting location and 8 pixels from its starting location as well. And you'll notice that it goes from 8 to 13, from 13 to 21, and then from 21 to 32. All the while, the top value is increasing. And then we expect the top value to stop increasing because it gets to the bottom of that curve. So you can see my cursor right now. It gets to the bottom of that curve and then goes straight to the right and then back up. And so sure enough, we see the top go from 72 to 77 to 80 to 80 to 74. And from this 80 to 80, it animates from the left region 67% or 67 pixels over to 199 pixels. So it actually gets about to 80 and then it animates sideways where the top value doesn't change anymore. And then from the 199, you start to see that 80 pixels start to diminish again, 74, 63. That's because it's going back up around the right-hand side of that loop. So if we were to look at this, you can see exactly the motion it's going through inside the keyframe animations right here, where we go from top 30 to top 48 to top 61 to top 72. It just keeps moving further and further away from the top and then back closer to the top as the left values change as well. So we can start to identify from the performance tab exactly what's going on right there. So we realize that that's not too terribly bad. It's using a CSS keyframe animation, so it's not using JavaScript to do that, which means that it's going to be a lot less costly. You can actually see in this case here, 59% of the region that we have selected is a style calculation, and the other 40% is layout. So there are no timers, there's no scripting or anything happening in this particular region. This is just CSS in the browser updating the location and the offset of an item on the screen. Where we do see a lot of scripting is inside here. So actually we'll zoom inside here. So we have this script right here, script evaluation, and this is a socket communication, or cdn.socket.io. And so this is actually a way to communicate across different documents. If I believe I don't think I've done much with sockets in recent history, but socket.io is a framework or a small utility for kind of facilitating that communication. So there's going to be some communication here. Other items, we've got a request here, or a script evaluation. Nothing too big. Here's an HTTP request. So this will show us exactly how long this particular request took to finish. You can always right-click on one of these and say filter to event, and that takes us to that entire event itself. So we can see exactly what was happening inside there. And so you can also expand these out to see what's happening as subsets of them. So in this case, I'll filter to this event, and we can see exactly what took place inside there. So we had this script evaluation from MSDN. This wound up having garbage collection taking place, so there was a variable that was no longer needed. We created an element. We inserted that element into the DOM, created another element, inserted it into the DOM, created a third element, inserted that into a DOM, and then created another element here. The ready state change fired, so that sounds like that's probably created an iframe. Basically, the ready state changes whenever the document is in a state of loading. The phase that it is presently in at any given time is known as the ready state. So it's letting you know how ready it is. Is it requested? Is it loading? Is it done loading? And anytime that state progresses from 0 to 4, I believe, are the different options, you get this ready state change event handler that fires off a ready state change, and then you can respond to that and do things if you'd like. And then we have the load event right here, which definitely sounds like an iframe. We have a further requests here, one for this error file, JavaScript file. This is no idea what kind of file this is. You could always jump in and inspect them more if you wanted to. It takes you to the actual file here. So this looks like actually a JavaScript file right here, like JSONP or something. So yeah, that's pretty much the performance tooling inside here. You can collapse regions if you don't really care about the visual throughput. You could collapse that so you're not looking at it. One of the other things you could do is check the JavaScript call stacks. So this is all of the scripting that has taken place inside the selection right there. So if I kind of release that selection, say show me everything entirely, you can start to see what JavaScript on the page kind of is the most costly. So in this case, we spent about 12.4% of the time on from this particular file right here, code chat 046 player. And you can start to kind of break in real quick and see, okay, of that 1241, well, there was 986 inside in our wrapper, 955, and then you start to see all of the individual things that you were running. So here's some JavaScript from Bootstrap, insight.min.js. These aren't really using a whole lot of resources. This one right here is using about 3%, this anonymous function called simple. You can see that there's 2% here, 1.91, 1.27, all the way down to this set timeout, which is a DOM method, which is going to allow them to execute some code after a predetermined amount of time, usually measured in milliseconds. And so, or always measured in milliseconds, but usually people change the way that they use their notation depending on who's using who's writing the code and who they have to make it work for. So yeah, this is not super. I mean, this is actually more helpful whenever you have hangs on sites that are causing the page to freeze up, lock up, the UI thread to get locked up. You can usually drop in here real quick and easily see which functions are running the longest. They're usually here at the top of the inclusive CPU, and you might identify areas in which you can optimize your code. Let's see, there's other items. So back to the timeline portion of the code. I have filter events turned on. You can enable image decoding as well, or you could disable UI activity, like we're not curious about that. You could even say the duration, to only show me things that last longer than 1 millisecond. So you notice a lot of this stuff, a lot of this is actually over 1 millisecond in size. So we wouldn't see anything. Here we go. We have some small items here like 0.35 milliseconds, 0.4 milliseconds, 0.34 milliseconds. If we were to filter out everything that is less than 1 millisecond, we'd see some of those disappear. Not a whole lot though, but it kind of lets you get away from the stuff that is clearly not going to be locking up your system. This is a big one here. So this is 7 seconds were spent on this HTTP request right here. And so that's definitely a pretty heavy thing. So that was Slack in Vorlon, Azure websites. Yeah. So we can actually turn on UI activity again and see exactly what was going on during this entire request right there. That was a very, very long request. So the only thing that's happening, it looks like, are those layout and paints that we already saw, the ball that's being animated around the curve of the pipes. So you might, this would definitely be something that we want to check into, figure out why this HTTP request took 7 seconds. It doesn't look like it was blocking anything, so it's not exactly real crucial. You can see that during this particular section of time, the frames per second stayed at 60. They never dropped. We had some styling or rendering and mostly styling. So it's not at all, it's not that bad. I mean, this is not the type of thing that I would really concern myself with. It is curious why it took 7 seconds though. That's a long time for a request. But I wouldn't be too worried about it. One thing you can do as well, if you want to see kind of what takes the longest time, you can change from start time, which makes everything chronologically sorted, to duration inclusive, which will put heavier stuff at the top. So of all of the operations, whenever we loaded this page, the heaviest one, the one that took the longest, was that HTTP request that we just got done looking at. Second to that, we didn't have anything that lasted more than a second. Here was this HTTP request that took about 9.5 tenths of a second. So about 95% of a second, 940 milliseconds. Once you get to 1,000 milliseconds, you have a second. And so we had also something here that took about 8 tenths of a second, 8 tenths of a second here. So TFW Boredom says, yes, go. Awesome watching Weekend Warrior. Stick around to the very end, but I can't hope whatever you take on next will provide just as cool opportunities. Thank you very much. And I think I'm going to wrap it up here as well. It's the developer tools are pretty phenomenal. You could literally spend days just kind of poking around them and learning quite a bit. Yeah. So I'm going to drop off as well. It has been a lot of fun. It's been great, these weekends doing the Microsoft Weekend Warrior. It's been a pleasure talking with everybody. Thank you all so much for making it very meaningful to me. Thank you for helping me file bugs. Thank you for helping me make the internet a better place. It is truly very special, to get to hang out here on the weekends with all of you. As for what the future holds, follow Jonathan Sampson on Twitter. That's me. It's my personal account, and I may find opportunities to do something similar in the future, but just under a different environment. Evil Pro says no storytelling like last week. I don't know what stories. What stories did I tell last week? I'm not quite sure. Let's see. Yeah, I don't actually recall which stories I might have told. So, I mean, if there are any questions, I'm about to wrap it up. But if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to try to answer them if I can. Illusion, thanks for hanging out. I really wish we could have figured out the NASA thing. I'm still kind of that's itching away in the back of my mind. Like what on earth was that? I'll have to poke at it a bit this week whenever the engineers get in who work on layout and text and stuff like that. I have to see if I can co-opt some of their time. Great watching this week's Weekend Warrior stream. Thanks a lot for the work you've done for us, make Edge better, and also for showing us how to properly debug websites. Yeah, it's been a joy, man. It's been a lot of fun. Checked in mobile emulation tool in Opera. It had 500. Did you mean 50px font size? It wasn't so large. So some of the font-related stuff is only going to repro on the phone itself. It's unfortunate, but there are some font-related items that are not going to work on the desktop. We can tell the web page that we are Windows 10 Mobile. We can tell the web page that we are a certain width, but there are certain text-related scaling features of the mobile operating system that they just turned off for the desktop, presumably. And so that's one major limitation. If you go to many of the sites on the web, use explicit line height. So in CSS, you can specify your font size, your font family. You can specify your line height. If you set the line height to like 150 pixels, then obviously it's going to give you a little more vertical spacing between individual lines of text. One of the things we do on the phone, you can scale up text. If you go into your settings, the ease of access, you can increase text scaling. Unfortunately, that increase, that multiplier, doesn't change line height. So as a result, you get really big text that starts to overlap. So if this was your text, and I've got two lines here, a line right there and a line right here, they would kind of grow together like that. But instead, what happens is they grow together like this, where they start to overlap each other. And it's because that text scalar multiplier on the phone, that's a feature of the operating system, not of the browser. We obviously we delegate the job of drawing text lines to the operating system, I believe. And as a result, that increases the font size and everything, but it doesn't increase the line height, unfortunately. And so we have a bug filed for that. But you run into little issues like that, which only repro on the phone, on the mobile device, not on the desktop. It's kind of a tough thing. So Lee is asking where I am off to, or will I be working on my own? I won't be working on my own. I've thought about that, over the years, how that would be really fun, but that would be really tough. Maybe someday in the future, who knows? But the question as to where I'm off to, I have not yet said where I'm heading to. I'm probably going to announce that, I believe, next week. So yeah, be watching the @Jonathan Sampson account, and I should announce that early next week, probably Monday or Tuesday time. Spill. What I mean, I really, really enjoy what I do. I really enjoy, debugging websites. I really enjoy writing JavaScript. I really enjoy building the web out. As Tech says, I really enjoy fixing the web, fixing the internet. So I'm not going to run off and start building tractors or anything, although that would be pretty cool. I'm going to continue working in the web space. It's a passion, and I'm going to continue hopefully working with JavaScript on a daily basis, and web development, on a daily basis. And I hope to still be an MVP. So here at Microsoft, we have MVPs, which are people in the community who are very helpful in the community, that they are obviously espousing good practices, that they represent the technology well, that they're assisting to one another, they help other people. That is my goal, to become an MVP again. I used to be one before I joined Microsoft, and you can't be an MVP and an employee, unfortunately. So I'm hoping to get that status back and continue to work with the Edge team as just a community member. So we'll see. I'm not going to Google. So I can say that. I'll tell you that. I'm not going to Google. Although everyone assumes that if you're leaving Microsoft, you must be going to Google. I don't have any plans to go work at Google right now. So, although, a buddy of mine, I was talking to him, I don't know if it was, I think it might have been yesterday, and he's enjoying that free Google food. You get free Google food, apparently, if you work at Google. So, obviously, you'd have to work in a Google office, I'm assuming. So, nope, not going to work for the big G. Microsoft, every now and then there's free food. There is very affordable food. Food is, you get really amazing food at very low rates. So, yeah, every now and then there's free food, but more often than not, you get great food at a very affordable rate. It would cost me $20 or something to go get a hamburger down the road. Here it would cost like $3. So it's you get pretty amazing deals. I don't blame companies that give free food and stuff. It is probably because they want to keep you at the office, and I'm okay with that. You obviously, as an individual, you have to decide what your work-life balance is, how often you're going to be at work, how often you're going to be at home. You know, if you're younger, you know, actually having free food at the office and showers and gyms and stuff, that's awesome. You know, that you could really focus on your career, really focus on making a big impression. If you're older and you are trying to save money because you have to spend like $200 a month on diapers, having free food is probably really nice at work. You don't actually have to, you know, buy food for the whole month or anything. So it's got its perks, you know. It's definitely, companies try to take care of their people. You know, Microsoft has got a fantabulous, let's just invent a little word there, fantabulous discounts and pros. Whenever you join Microsoft, you know, you get free gym membership, all that type of stuff. Many other perks. It is truly a pretty great place to work. If it's not Google, it has to be Amazon. Are you just looking in the Pacific Northwest area at all the big companies, the tech companies? I mean, we have Nintendo here as well. I mean, we have Expedia, we have downtown Bellevue. There's quite a few big companies down there too. So Evil Pro is asking, how did you get the opportunity to join Microsoft? So in 2012, I had a bunch of friends that worked for a small startup, and when those friends found that they needed, so that startup was working with Microsoft on various different things. You know, Microsoft would, you know, hire people to help with web compatibility and stuff like that. And so that company was hired by Microsoft. They got some Microsoft contracts, and they decided we need to bring on a new resource to help out. And so one of the things that I got to do, well, you know, backing up a little bit, some of the people that worked at that company said, well, we know a guy. Like, multiple people knew me, and they said, you should interview Jonathan Sampson. I was a PHP developer at the time, building WordPress sites for a publisher, and I wanted out because I kept doing the same thing over and over and over. Great people I worked with. It was just that, you know, we had a very repetitious product lifecycle, and so I was doing basically the same thing over and over and over for a couple of years, and I wanted out. And you know, friends of mine at this other company that said, hey, we have a contract with a big client. We need additional resources. Would you like to interview? So I said, sure. So I did my interview. I called into it, and the interview wound up being with Microsoft. So Microsoft was interviewing this company, and this company was interviewing me, and it was all one phone call. And so I went on there. Microsoft was asking us about, you know, developing for web standards, building compatible websites, writing code that is cross-browser compliant. They wanted to make sure that the developers that they were going to be giving their contract to knew what they were doing. And so I was on this call. It was my first call ever with the company I was working with, and I was there to represent them for Microsoft. And it turns out we wound up getting the contract. Microsoft was pleased with my answers, and so I worked as a developer at that company for a couple of years on Microsoft contracts. So the first one was with the release of Internet Explorer 10, Microsoft wanted to make sure that IE was working across the web. And so what that meant was go out onto the web in IE 10 and see which websites are broken. Basically what we're doing right now, where we go on the websites, we find problems with them, and we reduce the websites to try and figure out what the bug is. When we reduce it, we try to do outreach. We try to contact the owner of the site and see if they can fix the issue, or we funnel the bug back into Microsoft. And I was doing this and did this for about a year, and then Microsoft said, hey, we'd actually like to start up a program and encourage developers in the community to do what you're doing, to, you know, go out, debug the web, find out what's broken, let us know, perform outreach, and we'd like to call it the Microsoft Champs. And I thought, man, someone is going to call us the Microsoft Chumps. I'm fairly certain if we go with that name. And I was thinking, you know, there's a website called DocType, which is a technical term in web development, and there is there was a podcast called Non-Breaking Space, which is another technical term in web development. I was like, it would be cool if we used some type of technical word that is familiar to web developers that maybe has a double meaning. People who are out there assisting the community, they're helping the community. And so I suggested user agents, because the user agent it's a very helpful property in the browser. It's what you use to identify which browser you're in. And oftentimes the user agent is leveraged to fix and circumvent certain browser bugs or gaps in implementations. And so they were like, oh, yeah, that's awesome. Let's call it the User Agents program. So the User Agents program was started, and me and a couple others were the kind of first members in there. And after just a couple of years in the User Agents program, working with the Microsoft team more and more, they finally decided we should probably just bring this guy on full time. So one day I got a phone call from Microsoft inviting me to interview. The next day I got a phone call from someone else at Microsoft asking me to interview. And I was like, well, there's two teams that just, I don't know, you guys figure this out, but I'm more than happy to come and interview. That'd be amazing. That'd be fun. So they flew me out for interviews. I did some phone call interviews first, and then flew me out for interviews. Did fairly well, I suppose. And they offered me a position. So that required me to relocate from the state of Georgia, where we had just been living for a little bit after moving back to the States from Brazil. And we moved from Georgia to Washington State. So been up here for about 2.5 years now. And that kind of summarizes the beginning of my time here. And of course, the last 2.5 years has been doing something very similar on the Edge team, working to improve the Edge compatibility with the web, and overall make the web a better place. So it's been a lot of fun. So yep, that's what is this? Lee Bridgewater is telling me to let's see. So Evil Pro asks, I mentioned at that older job that I had that the PHP WordPress stuff was becoming very repetitive. We would publish a new site, have to stand up, MySQL database, PHP site, everything, WordPress instance, and that was becoming very repetitive. And so Evil Pro is asking, was it becoming repetitive, here at Microsoft, doing just debugging sites over and over and over again? Not so much. You look at kind of what we're facing today, where at one moment we may be debugging a JavaScript issue, which was, if we recall, the Twitter issue, where as you type and you're deleting characters, an iframe gets added just above the first pixel of the viewport and then popped out and then put back in and popped out, and that causes the page to scroll up. That was a JavaScript issue. Really cool. So we debug that. We move on to the next one, maybe like the nerdstore.com.br. And that is a layout issue. It has nothing to do with JavaScript. And so we work on reducing that. And then we get to the NASA site, where the text is wider than the actual page itself. And that's a line wrapping issue. That has nothing to do with JavaScript. It's technically kind of a layout issue, but it's more of a line wrapping item. And that's a totally different brand of problem. And so the great thing about my current capacity here on the team is you are doing repetitive work in that you're reducing a bunch of bugs, but the nature of those bugs is very different, very, very different. It's like, it's repetitive to eat, but you don't have to eat the same thing every day. You can eat very different foods and enjoy kind of the variety of options that you have. And so with web debugging, with reductions and stuff, it is very repetitive in that you're doing debugging all the time, but the very nature of the things is radically different. So that it gives you plenty of variety and variability. So, yeah, if there are no other questions, then I'm probably going to shut this down and terminate the final broadcast of the Microsoft Weekend Warrior Series. Extra Mania Gamer, thanks for hanging out. Evil Pro, glad that the story could be of interest. Microsoft is a great place to work. Phenomenal people. It is definitely, I'm not exaggerating, it is full of some of the world's greatest engineers, in my personal opinion. And when you're here, you get access to them. You get insight into things that you would never, you would never have had access to. You get plenty of insight, deep functional insight into what browsers are and how they work and web development, and it is absolutely phenomenal. I would not have traded this experience for anything. So I would say if you want to work at Microsoft, get first identify what you want to do. If you want to work on the browser, get very familiar with how browsers work. There are a couple articles. There was an article that was written on, I think it was html5rocks.com, about how a browser works. There was this engineer, and I believe she was ill for a little bit of time, or for some reason she was not working for like a summer or 2 months or something like that. And she decided that she wanted to know how a browser worked. And so I believe she went through and read the source code, or read as much of the source code as she could for Firefox, and just documented how does a browser work. When it comes across a web page with HTML, like how does it take this long string of characters and turn it into boxes on the screen or animations on the screen? Like how does any of that work? And so she went through and studied it out and wrote this phenomenal article that was really popular a couple years back on html5rocks.com. And so I would mention, let me see if I can actually find that real quick. HTML5. How browsers work. Yep, so I'm going to post this inside the chat. So I would say, check out that article. It's really cool. It's 5 years ago, actually. Oh, looks like Talia went and did a talk on it as well. So I would check that out, really learn the deep kind of internals for how the browser works, identify which part of the team you'd like to work on. If you want to be in the video team, layout team, performance team, scripting engine, there's the Chakra team, which builds a JavaScript engine. You've really got I was just talking to Colleen today, and I was saying, before I joined Microsoft, before I really started working on these issues that are more close to the browser itself, you kind of from a distance, it's out of focus. I mean, you know what a browser is, the general shape of what it is, but it's just a little out of focus. And the closer you get, the more details that start to appear, that you see this is an array of individual components that are working together. And then it gets even closer, and you say, okay, each one of those components is an array of individual components working together, and each one of those are managed by dozens of developers, if not more. And it becomes, you start to appreciate more fully just how complicated this industry is, and just how complicated the software is. It is really amazing that any of this stuff works at all. Like, it is mind-blowing. And the closer you get to it, the more in awe you are of just the fact that, we're talking millions of lines of code. I've never seen millions of anything that I can think of, and to understand exactly all of those logical portions of that and the individual capabilities of each one of those, and to be able to reuse functionality so that you're not just creating a bunch of duplicate implementations for different things. So if two people want to do the same type of operation, they can have one method that does that, as opposed to having to recreate the same thing twice or more. It is just astounding that the industry works, and we've got Edge and Chrome and Firefox and Brave and Opera and Vivaldi and Internet Explorer and all these different browsers that do everything in slightly different ways, and yet they all kind of hold it together. It's pretty incredible. So it's been definitely humbling to work on this team. So Lee Bridgewater says, best size and brand of monitor to work off for the work that you do. You know what? Anton back here. So this monitor is just over my right shoulder here, left on for you. It's a 4K monitor. Anton, he codes with his font size half a pixel tall. The guy's a machine. So yeah, it's definitely, I suspect that if you can get a 4K monitor, then why not? I don't have 4K monitors. My Surface Book is high resolution, high DPI, but the rest of my setup is not. So I typically bump up my font size to I don't know. I'm thinking maybe 30 pixels or something. I like it nice and big. I like my text really big. Alrighty, I think this is a good place to probably shut it down. It has been lots of fun, everybody. Thank you very, very much for hanging out. Just kind of short, informal chit-chat here at the very end. But it's time to shut it off and pack up and go home. And this is, I mentioned it a couple times already, this next week will be my last week here at Microsoft. So I am happy to help reduce and file bugs. If you happen to come across them, just let me know. And we'll try and fix the web for one more week before I head out. But then the MS Edge Dev account on Twitter, at MSEdgeDev, is just packed with some of the greatest people that I could ever hope to see on it. Really phenomenal people like Colleen, who I just had lunch again with today. Really smart engineers who deeply care about the web. And they will be there to assist, from here on out. They've been there all along too. I've just been kind of trying to add a little additional support, by way of these weekend warrior kind of debugging sessions. So it has been a lot of fun. Everybody, thank you so much. This is Jonathan Sampson signing off for the last time as a Microsoft employee. Goodbye.